It is estimated that 1 in 6 people with a learning disability are prescribed antipsychotic medication by their GP without having the condition which the drug is designed to treat. These medications can cause serious side effects. Restlessness.
I couldn't focus on anything. I was constantly distracted.
I swayed from foot to foot. I paced while standing.
My mood would go up and down. I could be happy 1 minute, the next I could be sad, upset and crying.
Drowsiness and daytime sleepiness.
You feel less of a person. You just feel numb.
It made me feel like a zombie.
I felt sluggish. I never had the motivation to do anything.
Blurred vision and dizziness.
My tablets make me forget everything.
I felt really drugged up.
Physical symptoms like involuntary body movements and dry mouth.
You feel like there is cotton in your mouth. I'd wake up feeling extremely thirsty.
My brain felt like it was zapped by electricity every few hours.
Long-term use can lead to serious problems like weight gain, poor heart health, organ failure, and in some cases premature death. Let's hear from Andrew about his experience. Andrew was given an antipsychotic medication to help with his anxiety.
The first day I took medication was the worst day of my life. It kicked in quickly. I felt weak. I couldn't get off the sofa. I couldn't move. But I felt a rush of anxiety. My brain was in overdrive, but I was locked in.
Andrew would jump at any little sound, even the ones he made himself.
The next day I took half a tablet. The lower dose was easier, but I still couldn't focus. People didn't understand and told me there's nothing to panic about. I was exhausted and yawned constantly. I worried that people would think there was something wrong with me. One of the things that helped was exercise. Even just moving my body helped. I spent time on things I enjoyed. Things I could focus on, like colouring. It's important to make time for the things that make you feel good.
When Farah was discharged from hospital back to her own home, she was prescribed a high level of antipsychotic medication for behaviour deemed challenging. The family were keen to reduce this. They started by reducing lorazepam and diazepam.
Farah had been on this medication since she was 13, so it had to be slowly reduced. It took 2 years to stop the medication completely. Farah used to sleep on and off throughout the day. The first thing we noticed was that she was more alert and wasn't snapping as much. Farah never initiated conversation, but she'd answer questions with a yes or no. One day, she came and sat with me. She'd never done this before.
Blah, 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 blah.
As months went on, Farah started talking. It started with little bursts. Oh, I forgot to do this equation.
Surprise!
Oh, hi Farah. What are you doing here?
I wanted to see what you were up to. What's that you're working on?
Oh, it's my maths homework.
Maths homework? Pfft. What a load of rubbish. Wait, are we going to McDonald's today?
Well, yeah, but...
I want to go to McDonald's now! What's for dinner? Are we there yet?
Farah will now
We're
seek you
taking
out,
the dogs for a
tell you
walk.
what's on her
Wait,
mind,
do we have dogs?
or ask
Do we have
questions.
dogs?
No one had realised the effects the medication was having on Farah's ability to communicate.
Many people can't tell us what they are experiencing. Too many people are labelled as challenging and are given medication to treat mental health problems when they have no such diagnosis. This is a human rights issue. STOMP wants to ensure that people only receive these drugs for the right reasons. Medication alone is not the solution. It focuses on behaviour, not the underlying difficulties the person's experiencing.
Hi, I'm Bev Murphy and I'm the Head of Practice for United Response, a national charity supporting people with learning disability and autism.
Hi, I'm Kate and I am the filmmaker of this STOMP project film you're watching now.
It's been a real pleasure to work with you, Kate. I'm so glad that you agreed for us to do this kind of this bit at the end, because you're also a person that has real experience of the things that we talked about. And when you and I first talked about doing this, your passion about the subject became kind of really obvious, and that comes through in the filmmaking as well.
Okay, so the first question would be is, well, I suppose for everybody, is what can we all do to stomp out medication?
So I think the main thing is to recognise when medication's being used to manage people's behaviour. And quite often medication's been around for a long time and people don't necessarily recognise that that's what it's for. People might think it's for medical issues or epilepsy or those sorts of things. But actually recognising that medication's being used in that way is really important. And once we do that, we have to start thinking about what other things that we can do, what proactive things can we do that actually help the person to kind of manage in their environment or change their environment so that they don't need to use that behaviour and therefore they don't need the medication.
It's basically like getting to know the person before you actually judge them. So it's like if we support somebody to go to a park, for instance, they get very upset for some reason and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore, they lose that motivation, and then it's like, okay, I need to do a hypothesis. I need to understand that this person's upset, but I need to find out why. So it could be possible triggers. So it could be like, it happened on a Saturday, it's where all the kids were around, there was no school, and it was happening at 9 o'clock in the morning, and there was probably like dogs around, it was very noisy. So it could mean that you could take away that trigger by going, what if we do it on, not a Saturday, but we could do it like on a different day, where the kids aren't around. So then it's like you try that route, and if it works, that's awesome. And if it doesn't work, we'll have to like try something else.
That's fantastic. You've just described something that we teach our staff and we encourage all of our staff teams to think about, and that's positive behaviour support. And so you've just described that in a nutshell, which is fantastic. But it is really about, as you say, getting to know people and looking for what it is that's making it work, making the behaviour happen, because actually, people are doing it because there is something wrong, because something's not working for them. And so you're absolutely right. The key is to get to know people and then to kind of look at what we can do to support people differently so that those things aren't problems anymore.
So then it's like, even if they have to have medication as like the last resort, what would be the side effects to look out for?
So the side effects of medication are kind of different depending on the medication and depending on the individual. So there's a whole range of different things that people might experience. And so people might become really anxious, people might become tired, people might, kind of put on weight, not be able to sleep, or, kind of feeling drowsy all day. People might, start to suffer from kind of other kind of issues like, stomach upsets and all those sorts of things. But actually, if someone goes on to medication, then we should be asking for information about what the possible side effects are, and then we should be looking out for those things to see whether they are actually happening, and then going back and saying, what can we do about that?
It's funny you actually mentioned those things, because a few years ago I was given a diagnosis of anxiety and depression. So I was given risperidone, I was also given citalopram, and I was given 2 doses of it per day, so it's like 1 in the morning and 1 in the evening. Not only was I gaining weight, but I was really becoming more anxious, I was crying a lot more, And I was literally so tired. I was literally trying so hard to sleep at night, but I was like, this is robbing me of my sleep. I even told my parents this, like, this is robbing me of my sleep. So then my parents had to go to the doctor and go, this isn't working, is there a way to reduce this? So obviously they had to reduce it from that point on.
So what's fantastic about that is that you were able to kind of recognise what that was, you were able to kind of articulate and tell your mum and dad that that's what this was doing to you. And then they were able to kind of go back to the doctor and they were able to say, actually, we need to do something about that. I think the issue for us in services is that quite often we're supporting people who can't tell us that that's how they're feeling, or don't necessarily recognise that what they're feeling is related to the medication. So they're not able to verbally kind of articulate that in the way that you did. And so it's our responsibility to kind of look out for the kind of the non-verbal signs, look for changes in people's behaviour, look for the, you know, changes in people's health or how they're feeling, so that actually we can pick up on those things and do exactly that, then go back and say this isn't working.
I think it's like you have to know the person before you judge them. If we had somebody coming in at United Response for the first time and they have a history of medication, we need to understand why they're on that medication and whether we can reduce it or not. We don't assume medication's gonna be like the be all and end all. It's all gonna be fine. The medication's taking care of that person. We need to really understand we have to really understand that there are consequences to medication.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, it might be something that we need to use in an emergency situation, or, you know, there might be a kind of person going through a really difficult time, or, you know, things might be really difficult, and we might have to use it for a short period of time to help someone to manage their behaviour or be in a particular situation. But the key is to make sure that that's not seen, as you described there, a long-term solution. That actually what we do is say, okay, we need to do that for now, but as quickly as possible, we start looking for all of those other things that we can do that aren't medication, that are actually about improving the person's quality of life or helping them to cope in difficult situations so they don't need to take the medication going forward.
And this leads to the last question. Should medication be the first resort or the last resort?
Okay, so no doubt in my mind, medication should be the very, very last resort. And as I said, even when we have to use it, then we should make sure that we change that as quickly as we can. So yes, definitely the last resort and not the first.
It's like a restraint, isn't it? Because people think, let's just restrain the person. But in reality, that people need to use that as a last resort. They're not doing their homework. They're not doing the hypothesis of why that person is having a meltdown. They really need to understand why that person's upset and not go for their first resort. They must do their homework.
Yeah, and it's so true that quite often in services, you know, people are very busy doing lots of other things and they just react to things rather than, you know, in positive behaviour sport we talk about, you know, proactive strategy. So thinking about what can we do that's about all of that other stuff that avoids us getting to that place. But you're right, both medication and physical kind of restraints have been used historically in quite a reactive way and are seen as the way of managing. But we know so much more now about what we need to do to actually proactively avoid situations, and you've already described that brilliantly with your park example.
Okay, so bottom line, shall we stomp out the medication?
Oh, definitely.
Boom.
So if the discussions that we've had in the video that you've seen today, if that helps you to think a bit more about medication, either that you're on or someone that you know that's being used to manage people's behaviour, then we'd encourage you to look at the links that follow and follow up a bit more on the STOMP campaign and see what you can do to stomp out medication.